tourism sells the Caribbean as timeless paradise. Sun, sea, sand, escape. But step off the cruise ship or beyond the gates of an all-inclusive resort, and far more complex story comes into view. Because the Caribbean's tourism industry didn't replace colonialism. It actually just inherited it. And today that legacy is colliding with climate devastation. Let's get into it. To understand modern tourism in the Caribbean, you have to understand its past. Barbados, now known for luxury resorts, was once the birthplace of British slave society. And between 1640 and 1807, Britain transported nearly 400,000 enslaved West Africans to the island. Life on the plantation was defined by extreme violence, whippings, amputations, executions, and so much. On the Condrington plantation in the mid 18th century, 43% of enslaved Africans died within just 3 years of arrival. Life expectancy at the birth for an enslaved person in Barbados was 29 years old. This was the human cost of the transatlantic slave economy. And yet, on the backs of the suffering, extraordinary wealth was created. Historian Joseph Mckoy estimates that in the 18th century, 80% of export wealth in the Americas was generated by enslaved African labor. But most of the wealth never stayed in the Caribbean. British imperial policy was designed to extract it. Two-thirds of the economic value of the sugar industry flowed back to Britain through shipping, insurance firms like Lloyd's of London, and refineries that processed the final product. Plantation owners became rich, but empire became richer. Fast forward to today, the sugar fields are gone, but the extraction remains. Artists and historian Fiona Compton describes modern tourism as a rebranded plantation economy built for leisure instead of sugar. Most major hotel chains, cruise lines, airlines, and booking platforms operating in the Caribbean are foreign owned. For every dollar spent in the region, about 80 cents leaves the Caribbean through profit repatriation. Governments desperate for foreign exchange offer generous tax breaks for hotel developers. Cruise lines negotiate extremely low port fees, knowing that if one country pushes back, they can simply sail elsewhere. Inside all-inclusive resorts, tourists often have little interaction with the local economy. On cruise ships, restaurants, casinos, and spas keep passengers on board. When visitors do go ashore, they are often funneled through approved vendors, or worse, onto private beaches owned or leased by the cruise companies themselves. Local people are increasingly locked out, of course. They're locked out of land and spaces that they once used freely. As Compton puts it, this is cultural and economic dispossession happening in real time. Tourism doesn't just extract wealth, it extracts resources. In a single day, a typical cruise ship produces 21,000 gallons of sewage, 170,000 gallons of wastewater, a ton of garbage, chemical, and medical waste, oily blage water dumped at sea. On land, large hotels consume enormous amounts of water and energy in a region already facing water scarcity. Their lights stay on all night, their system runs 24/7. And Barbados government and advisor Rodney Grant puts it, governments alone cannot carry the societal and environmental burdens. I think he puts it best. So why does the Caribbean still depend so heavily on tourism? According to political economist Matthew Bishop, in the current global system, tourism is often the only industry capable of generating foreign exchange for small island nations. After independence in the 1960s and 70s, some Caribbean countries tried socialist development models. Many were undermined and, in Grenada's case, violently overthrown by U.S. intervention in 1983. With sugar collapsing and manufacturing blocked by global trade rules, tourism became the region's last resort. Today, that dependency is colliding with climate disaster. Despite producing just 0.3% of historic global emissions, the Caribbean is the second most disaster-prone region in the world. Since 2000, climate events have caused more than $200 billion in damage. At the same time, many Caribbean nations remain heavily indebted, borrowing to fix colonial underdevelopment and to build tourism infrastructure like airports and cruise ports. Jamaica reduced its debt to GDP ratio from 140% to 62%, saving about $500 million for disasters. But Hurricane Melissa alone caused about $8 billion worth of damage. As Bishop notes, Caribbean nations are suffering twice from historical injustice and from climate shocks they did not cause. Rather than doubling down on extractive tourism, Caribbean leaders are once again calling for reparations, not symbolic apologies, but structural repair. That includes community-owned hotels and eco-lodges, locally owned heritage tour companies, fair taxation of multinational corporations, debt relief, and climate compensation. Because the land stolen during colonialism is now being packaged and sold back to the world as paradise. So luxury resorts may try to scrub the past clean, raking the beaches each morning to preserve the illusion. But the Caribbean story cannot be erased. We live in a world forged by empire. And the real question now is this: if paradise was built on exploitation, how do we rebuild it with justice? For the African Diaspora News Channel, I'm Whitney Mckoy. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected.